Since I'll be raising the blade higher than that original fence, I tacked on a taller fence so I don't cut all the way through it, and extended the cuts to full depth by lining up the already cut edges on the curve of the sled. This is how you would cut these angled box joints without the origin. So why use the origin at all? Well, the origin gave me a perfect starting point, and this step is more like following an already perfect template. Adding a box joint jig onto this jig would have been required to make these openings perfect without the origin. Doable for sure, but still another step. And again, look at how clean that cut looks. Love this blade. The matching box joints for the top could have also been cut on the table saw using a jig. Instead of having a sled with an angled fence, you would have a straight 90 fence, but you would tilt your blade to 30 degrees to make the angled box joints. Again, I would have to need to build a new sled for that because I don't want to mess up the kerf on my existing sled by tilting the blade. So I did it this way, and I'm sure there are a billion other ways to do it. I cut out most of the waste of the bandsaw, which didn't take too much time. Then I used a flush trim bit to clean up the bandsaw cut so it was as clean as the origin cut. Moving back to the legs, I set the blade to 30 degrees using my triangle. Again, it was a lifesaver on this build for sure. And I cut the legs to their final width, which you can see created those last little fingers of the box joints on the edges. I kept the Wood River blade in since it's a ripping blade, and those cuts were unreal. After cutting off one edge, I adjusted the fence and cut off the other edge with the same angle. I probably should have flipped the board around so the square edge was against the fence, but this worked out okay with a feather board and a push stick. These joints on the legs are nice and square, but the joints on the top are not because I used a router bit to make them, so I squared off all those cuts with a chisel. Before I can glue on the legs, I need to fix that gaping hole on the underside from when I cut on the wrong side of the line. I cut a thin piece of the sapele from one of my cutoffs and glued it into place. The grain wasn't an exact match, but it's better than a gaping hole.